Hello, everyone. Just getting started here. I'll turn up the volume here. So if you're joining, please say hello and tell us where you're joining from. Tonight, we're going to be talking about how to make your visions a reality. Hello, Pinky. How are you? And we're on YouTube and TikTok. And just getting started here. So how is everybody? Hey, Nicole. Let's see. How's everybody tonight? We're about 1 week away from a big doorway of solstice. And so today I wanted to talk about visualizations and the process of making your dreams a reality. Are you ready for your dreams to become your reality? Yes. All right. And now it's kind of quiet. I'm not in my usual room. I changed rooms so I could have my son in the background. So how was your day today? No, your dreams are crazy. Which dreams? The night dreams? Your night dreams are crazy. The dreams are going to be very interesting. Your literal dreams. Yeah, those ones. Yeah, the dreams are actually going to heighten and pick up this next week because we're heading into solstice. And solstice is a very powerful doorway. And I'm really feeling this next solstice, this next 6 months of the year is going to be pretty life-changing for a lot of people. It's going to be very powerful. There's a lot of power already coming in. Unfortunately, also around solstice time, we see a lot of people transitioning. A lot of death happens at this time. It's a time of death and rebirth. And so whether it's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, psychological, there's a lot of shifting happening, a lot of emotions, makeup, breakups, weddings, births, buying new houses, leaving old houses, moving, relocating. It can be all of that at this time because we're heading into a time of massive transformation and transition. And a big doorway is opening for us to step into that transformation. And so tonight I wanted to talk about the process of taking your vision. And sometimes it does come in a night dream. Sometimes that's how we get our best inspirations and our best insights and visions, or it could come as an inspiration. You may have an inspiration hit you out of nowhere and you're like, wow, that's something I want to do. That's something I want to pursue. And there's a process to how you go about actually manifesting that. And I think a lot of times we talk about, like, oh, you have to feel it, you have to think it, you have to believe it, you have to do all this stuff. But there's an actual process to actually taking that big vision and then breaking it down into the smaller steps that make it the reality. And that's the part that most people, especially spiritual people, especially people who have grand visions, struggle with. It's that you get this huge insight. You're like, I want to change the world. I want to do this. I want to do that. And then it gets lost because it's too big. And so one of the things Black Elk said in his book, Black Elk Speaks, is that you can't be a medicine person until you take the vision that the Great Spirit gave you and you manifest it into reality, that you see this vision for your life because you will be given a vision. And that's why people would go on vision quests and they would go and do these ceremonies and rituals to see what their destiny is. What is their medicine? Why are they here? What is their life purpose? And then you take that grand thing you're given, and then our biggest mission and probably our hardest mission is to actually achieve it. Yeah, the small steps to the grander. But it's easy to say, oh, just think it and believe it or feel it, or you have to do. It's a lot more than that, because your conscious mind is what you're always battling. And the conscious mind is easily distracted. It's that monkey mind. And so it'll take this big vision, and then it'll go to another vision, and then it'll go to another thing. And then it'll sometimes you could just walk into a room and forget why you walked into the room, because your conscious mind already thought of 10,000 things before you walked into that room. So you just totally forget why you even walked into that room. And so think about, like, if you have a big vision and then your conscious mind is constantly getting you distracted, I mean, how likely are you to achieve that vision? You can't, because your mind is just it's just, bouncing around. And so that's part of the process, is to, meditate. That's why we meditate. It's to clear the monkey mind. It's to focus. It's to get yourself into a position of clarity. And that's the first part. And that's what we call, like, setting a goal. That's the first part. Am I a therapist? That was my first training, was psychology in my undergrad. And I've had a lot of counseling experience, but I'm actually a shaman and medicine woman. But I do have a heavy background in psychology and therapy. And so I could see this a lot with people, whether it was, in therapy sessions or now in spiritual sessions, is that we have a big vision that the Great Spirit gives us, that we're here to do. And a lot of people are given, like, brilliant ideas, like even life-changing, life-altering things. But where they struggle with is how to take that big vision and make it smaller. And so the first step is what we call, like, goal setting, getting clear, getting focused, saying, okay, well, I have this big vision, but what's the first step in that big vision? What am I going to do with this? How can I really make this a reality? And part of it is first understanding, what the process is. Like, so say you have a business idea, you want to open a store. The first step is understanding what is the process of the store. Like, who is your demographic? What is your location? All those kind of nitty-gritty details, what kind of money you would need, financing, time, effort. You have to put together what they call, like, a business plan. You wouldn't be able to just, if you just open a business without an actual business plan, you're likely to fail. And most small businesses fail within their first 5 years. And every small business that I've ever seen that really fails is because they didn't have a vision. They had a vision, but they didn't have a plan of action. They just said, oh, I want to do this thing. And then they did it. And there wasn't a breakdown of, realistic goals. So the first thing is goals. But there's, like, a more mental process to it, because if you've never actually had a business, if you've never owned a business, if you've never done that, you first have to wrap your head around the mental components of it. Because, like I said earlier, the conscious mind will distract you. It'll go, like, in 10 million different directions. But your subconscious mind is always stable. And that's where you want to first work when you're working with your visions, is understanding how your subconscious mind works. And that's all the stuff that's buried underneath the conscious mind, that in a lot of ways are your programming. It's the way you operate. It's the way your ancestors thought. It's the way you were brought up to believe. It's all the things that have happened in your life, all the rejections, the abandonments, the neglects, all the stuff that's inside of you that you cover and you hide. And that's actually the operator of your life. And so part of understanding how to manifest your vision isn't like just feeling it and thinking it. It's really diving deep into what is stopping me and what distracts me. What distracts me from achieving that vision? And that will take some digging. That will take some digging into what it is exactly and why, why it is that maybe you have failed in the past too, which, it's not as like sexy as just saying, oh, let me think and let me feel it and let me believe it. And you need to do all those things. But I always tell people, you have to understand what distracts you from your dream, from your vision, from your goal, from what it is you really want to do. And see how your mind operates. See what it is your mind will put up blockages on your path. So for example, you'll get super excited in the beginning about your vision, but then, those unconscious, those subconscious thoughts start coming through like, oh, I could never do that, or I don't have the money. That's always the first one. Who would do this? Da 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 da. You start seeing all these blockages. And first thing is, don't attach to those thoughts. Just observe them. Observe them and see how it is that you operate, how you think. That's part of knowing thyself, is thinking, okay, okay, that's that thought. And write it down. Write it down and say, okay, today I was thinking this, and that. Because once you start putting an emotional energy into it, then it becomes a real blockage. You're less likely to do the thing that you want to do. And so that's the first thing, is to really understand. The thing about it is that when you can change the way you operate and you think, there's no stopping you. And so that's the thing a lot of people don't understand, is that really successful, like athletes and entertainers and business people, they always invest into some sort of hypnosis therapy or some kind of coaching or some kind of thing that helps them mentally first. When they really want to go for something, that's the first thing. I even have met like hypnotherapists who charge $25,000 an hour working with celebrity clients, just changing the way they think. So, and the first step is the visualization. You would be surprised at how many businesses have all the money, the resources, the everything, but they don't have the vision. And then on the opposite end, you meet a lot of intuitives, artists, creatives, people who are all day long visualizing and visioning things and coming up with wonderful ideas on how to make societies better, but they don't have the resources. So it's like opposite. And so if you compare the person with all the resources with the person who has the vision, that's the perfect match. But usually what ends up happening is a person with all the visions and the creative and all that, they usually get taken advantage of by the person who does have the resources. Or because of the lack of belief and the lack of goal setting and the lack of, steps, the vision dies somewhere along the process. Like it just stays stagnant and it just sits there. And so tonight, because we're about to head into this big doorway of solstice, and a lot of you out there are going to start really wanting to manifest your visions. You're going to start to get creative ideas. You're going to start to open those doorways. And now is the time to really kind of sit down and make it, a practice. Yeah, they're not disciplined. That's exactly right. Yeah. And why aren't you disciplined? That's part of the subconscious stuff. Is there's a reason why people have lack of discipline too. There's a reason. There's something that in the childhood, early childhood, something kind of went askew with discipline. Hello, Moon Sister. You had a computer program you wanted to build and you had the prototype, but had no idea how to launch. Yeah. And I'm sure a lot of people have different ideas. Like, I've heard everything like that. And the thing about it is that most of the really big visions and ideas that people presented to me and told me about, and when I asked them, well, what did you do with that, or how did you take it to the next step, or there was no next step. There was just, I have this great vision, or spirit showed me this, or this happened, or that happened, and then it just flopped because of those reasons that we were talking about. But more than anything, it was the self-confidence, the self-worth, and the motivation, and like you're saying, the discipline to move it forward. Then you found something similar out there after I thought of it. Yeah. Yeah, everybody has that happen. That everybody has that happen. I know everybody can, kind of resonate with that you had an idea that was like so thought-provoking, and then later somebody else actually did it. Yeah. My great idea like that was those crystal water bottles. Maybe, I don't know, 10, 13 years ago. I was like, it would be so awesome to have these like crystal water bottles, and people could change them out and this and that, and and then I don't know, like later, like 10 years later, 8 years later, those crystal bottles are everywhere. They're still everywhere. I was like, yeah, if I actually had took that idea to the next level, that could have been my crystal bottles. You wanted to open a store since 2019, but it couldn't manifest until now. And there was a seed planted there though. And it was the timing now. And here's the solstice. And it's going to be powerful to really open that vision up. And if you haven't already, to do a business plan, to sit down and pray and meditate and get clear on what your fears are around your business, what the next steps are, what your goals for this year are, that kind of stuff. I had to take full responsibility for my life, then the road opened for me on many levels. That's true. You took responsibility. See, in the native way, responsibility is just the ability to respond. It's kind of a different energy than in the West here. It's like, oh, responsibility is kind of a heavy burden. But in the ancient way, it was an ability to respond. It's not an ancient, like burden and heavy weight on your shoulder. It's just how you can respond to the things that happen in your life. You've seen those recently, the crystal bottles. I know, when I saw them, I was like, oh my gosh, that's my idea. And it's huge. They're everywhere. You can still make them. I can still make them, but it's not original anymore. Now I would be the copycat. I'd be the copycat. You get that? They'd be like, oh, you copied that from somebody else. Yeah, I did. It was my original idea. Now I know you could put a different logo on it, you could do a lot of different things, but it doesn't have that same flair. Because when they first came out, I was like, wow, so different. That's so cool. And the thing, like you were saying, Blissful Oracle, sometimes it has a lot to do with the timing. Like you want to do something, but it's not the time. Like you don't have the time, you don't have the energy, you're not ready, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically. So there's like a timing element to that too. And I think that's part of the planning process when you first have a vision, is like, is this actually something I can do? And how much time, energy, money would I have to put into it? And is it really worth it for me to do it? There are some visions that you'll have just so much passion, so much energy, so much gusto, so much like power to it. And I feel like a lot of that is also like when you're ready to step into what you call responsibility. You're ready to step into that gift, that opportunity. And then it's all a matter of divine intervention and things happening and moving and, aligning in such a way that you can manifest it. And not to say there won't be any speed bumps or obstacles or challenges, but your ability to overcome that is so much stronger. And that's when you really can manifest things that are powerful, is when you're in that power, you're in the seat of your power, because there's going to be a lot of those ideas, the crystal bottles, the, computer programs, all these things that we tap into because we're all connected into the collective. It's like Michael Jackson, he said years ago that if he didn't, put that idea down, like his songs, if he didn't write it down and, make it a reality, then that song would go to Prince. And then Prince would, be making millions and not him. He had that mindset already. He knew how the consciousness worked. He knew how ideas are actually not an individual's ownership thing, but rather a collective thing. It's like spirit wants these ideas, these inventions, these creations to go into the universe. They want us to come down into the earth. They know that they're going to benefit humanity, and they know that these are needed at this time, right? So you're getting downloads, you're getting these hits, but you're not the only one getting it. You're not the only one getting this idea. You're not the only one getting these hits, because there's a lot of seeds that spirit has to put in, because they know that the hardship of actually manifesting it is like, it's going to be the right person who can do it, who's ready to flower. And so a lot of people will get these same ideas, but maybe only one will actually, go for it and do it. It's just like if you ever watched that movie with Steve Jobs and how he invented Apple and all that, and how many phone calls and how many rejections, and he was in his parents' basement and all this stuff that he had to do in order to achieve that vision, that dream. And so there's that hard work element that, most people aren't going to do. All are called, but few answer. Exactly. It's like all the ringing is going out, ring, 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 and it's ringing all over. And, that's why we all have those moments of, man, I had an idea like that. I thought of that before. Wow, that's my idea. Not knowing that that idea went out to everybody. It just went out and it was blowing in the wind. And a lot of people were saying, yeah, that'd be a great idea. And they put the snooze button back on. But in the medicine ways, everybody has something they're here to do. Everybody has a vision. Everybody has a job to do, a service to do. And it's just, what are we going to do with that? And that's what they call it, life purpose. And a lot of people ask that question, especially when you're starting to really embark on your spiritual journey. The first question people usually ask is, why am I here? What am I supposed to do? What is my purpose beyond the mundane? And for some people, it's just like, being a good listener, or, whatever job you're doing. You're there holding that energy, that space. You're there serving people. You're there helping people. And then for a lot of other people, especially in this time, it's entrepreneurship, it's business, it's something that you're going to create, a service, a product, something that benefits humanity. And I feel like more and more as people start stepping out of these like mundane jobs, these everyday jobs, and they start following their heart callings and what it is that they're shown about who they are in their life, they're going to step into these services, these creations, these offerings. Like I know Blissful Oracle, she's opening a store. That's like, calling her to do. And there's going to be a lot of, people that come through that place, and there's going to be more ideas generated and, all that stuff that happens. But it's really about now understanding what your calling is, what is spirit calling you to do, and then what is the process to actually manifesting that, to actually making it happen, to what we call moving the mountains. And last week, I talked about the difference between intuition and spiritual power. And to really, truly create your vision, to bring something spiritual to the material, it really requires spiritual power, both intuition and spiritual power, because your intuition will guide you, but the power will help you to move those mountains. It will help you to overcome the doubts, the fears, the uncertainties, low self-worth, value, whatever has stopped you in your past, rejection, abandonment, neglect, whatever. And so when you start to empower your vision, and that's what they call intention, when you put power to your intention, which is not like false, it comes from deep inside of you. That's when you know your intention is real, is when it's not something flimsy. If you say like, I'm going to open a store, it means you're going to open a store. It's not one day, it's someday, it's not out there. It's okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to make it a reality. That's really what an intention is. It's putting your power and weight into something and putting that seed in the ground that says, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And then the goals and the dreams around it become the little branches or sprouts, right? Because you have goals that are like measurable, markers. So, okay, if you want to open a store, the first marker might be, okay, well, where's the location? What kind of store is this? Who am I catering to? What is the purpose of it? And then you start going into, the logistics of it. And then you can have fun with that too, with the dream part, because the dreams is like, oh, and I'm going to decorate it this way, and it's going to look this way, and I'm going to sell these types of products, and it's going to, put smiles on people's faces. And, you start having like fun with it too. But you also have like measurable goals that are like bing, 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 bing. And sometimes you make those measurable goals and sometimes you miss them, but then you refine them and you mold them, right? Yeah, SMART goals. Like most huge corporations, why they're successful is because they have like 10-year goals. They don't just have 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, but they have like 10 years, sometimes 10 years, goes to 20 years. Like I think Walmart has like a 10 or 20-year business plan. And it's not just about Walmart, it's about real estate and all kinds of other stuff. Oh, thank you, Ray Ray. Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, timely. Yes, all of that. That's the rational, that's the discipline. And the thing about the solstice energy and the Tonopoali, the solstice is the Hitchlu Pochli energy of the hummingbird who comes from the left side, which is your heart. So when we actually talk about discipline, I think a lot of us here in the West, we have a bad taste, like a bitter taste around discipline because of how we were taught to believe discipline is. We think discipline is like law and order, but actually discipline is just structure, and it's the cup that holds the water. And so in the ancient way of thinking of it, it's your heart. That's what discipline is. It's your heart. And when you put your heart into your intention, that's what's going to grow it. That's what's going to make it strong. Anybody who knows anything about growing, it's when you grow something from a seed that it becomes the strongest. That's the coolest thing about seeds. But seeds don't all germinate. You have to plant a lot of seeds to get a high germination rate. And sometimes you have to scar them, or you have to soak them, and you have to put them through the freezer. You have to do kind of like harsh things to make the seed like break open so that when you put it in the ground, it has a higher germination. And so it's like the same thing with our goals and our dreams and our visions, is that we have to put them through the fire in order for them to really burst open. And, you saw your seed sprouting today. That's awesome. Your new babies. Yeah. And isn't it so good? Because, they say like when you plant a seed, that your seed is like you trusting your future. That's the cool thing about planting. That's why really planting is one of the best things we can do because it teaches us a lot about how nature works. We're part of nature and how nature actually works. Because when you plant a seed, you plant a plant, you're planting something for your future. And you're also having the faith and trust in your future because you putting that seed down. So you have the goals and you have the dreams, and you have an intention that you're like, I'm going to do this. This is not floppy. It's really going to happen. And then the next thing is like the belief, the courage. And that's where you start taking actions. You start taking action with it. You start saying, okay, well, my first step is this. I got to call these people, or I got to, learn more about this. I have to take some time and research and study and understand this part, because like say, for instance, it's a subject that you don't really know a whole lot about. You may have to go back to school. You may have to go watch a bunch of YouTube videos. You may have to do things to learn about this. And so that's part of the belief part. And the belief part too is about understanding your limitations. There's going to be limitations in what you can and can't do. And part of understanding your destiny is knowing what is for you and what isn't for you. And I think that's really key when you're looking at your life, is like, is this even possible? Is this even possible for me at this time of my life? Maybe you have kids, maybe you have a family, maybe you're going through divorce, maybe you're going through something huge, and to do something of that magnitude is just not possible. Right? Oops, sorry, my light just. So it may not be possible for your life. And then, of course, there's like positive action. That's the first thing, is to think about the positive actions that you can take. And maybe you start with the easiest actions, the things that you're like, okay, yeah, I could do that. That's doable. This other stuff is going to take me longer. It's going to take me more time. And I think the more positive you can be through the whole process makes it easier. And then, of course, being in gratitude and being thankful for where you are and for getting this vision and for, all the good things that you can do with your visions. So there any questions so far? Anybody have an example or a question that they want to ask? I'm trying to adjust my YouTube here. No questions. Is anybody manifesting something that they want to talk about? One of the things that a lot of people start with is like a vision board. And so it took you over a year to build my online presence. Yeah. The thing about it is it'll take time, and it'll grow and expand, and it will change and morph into other stuff. You're trying to write a book. Awesome. Your group coaching program and a few small books. Manifesting isn't working lately. I started with a vision board last week to resume my work. Good. The thing about like writing a book is, first it starts off like an inspiration. And writing a book is a perfect example of this, because it'll start like as an inspiration. You'll be like, oh, I'm going to write a book about that. And they start writing. And at first you're super pumped up about the book, right? I know, because I'm a writer too. And so I was like, oh, I'm gonna write this book. It's gonna be awesome. And then like somewhere in the middle of it, and then it's like it gets to be kind of like a relationship where you're like, we're fighting all the time. It's not working out. It's like you lose some of that spark. And then if you keep with it, you know, usually how you know you're done with the book is you're kind of sick of it. You're done. You're ready to be over with it. And that's the thing about writing a book. It's like a relationship. You got to kind of like stick it through. Because in the Tonopawali, we call that like the eagle. The first medicine when you're creating something is the eagle. And it's the one that dives in and it's impassioned, it's inflamed, it's like, you know? And then the second part that comes in is the ocelot or the jaguar energy. And that's the patience, because you're going to need that patience to get through the project. You're going to need that patience to stick it through after the passion has faded. After the passion has faded, it's all about patience, endurance, overcoming challenges, obstacles, your mindset, keeping things fresh, taking breaks when needed, but staying the course. That's like the hardest part in manifesting anything, is staying the course and what we call trusting the process. Trusting that what you're creating, what you're doing is working, it's going, it's moving forward. And to keep that momentum going, that's the jaguar. That's what you want to work with, is jaguar medicine. Good evening, April. How are you? Let's see. Yeah, vision book works. Yeah, that's the medicine book that I talk about. I want to record an album. Wow. That's another one like that. That's one of those ones you got to stick it through. Also, it is good to do look back so you can see growth. Yes. Patience is where I'm struggling a lot. Yes, thank you. Yeah, patience is where everybody struggles. And you know, it happens in the beginning when you're starting a new project or you're manifesting, is that as you're manifesting and you're starting a new project, you have so much steam, so much passion, so much energy. And it's like you have to think of the long haul. Don't burn yourself out. Don't burn yourself out, because that's what the eagle story is. It's like the eagle dove in, he burned all his feathers, and he burned out. And then the next medicine to come in was jaguar. And jaguar, the reason he has those spots on him is because he learned the power of patience, of not burning yourself too fast, too soon. You know, to take your time with projects, and that's part of the goal setting, is like, realistically, how long is this book going to take me? Realistically, if I sat down every day from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock, and it's about 200 pages or something, like, realistically, what am I looking at in terms of time, energy, money, resources? What am I willing to invest into this project? And when you're like a small business owner, that's one of the biggest things, is burnout. Is one of the biggest things is burnout. If you're looking at a long-term vision, that is what you're here to do. The biggest thing you're going to have to manage is your time and your resources. And you're going to have to think about hiring people. You're going to have to think about the longevity of this project or business, because I see too many entrepreneurs fail because they just burn out. They're working 60, 80, 100 hours a week and they're burnt. They don't have a social life. Their family life is collapsing. Everything is collapsing because they're burnt. And you don't want to do that that takes all the fun out of everything. And then another thing we have to think about with visualization and manifesting is that there's two parts to it. There's the hard work and discipline that you need. And then there's the opportunity and what we call magic. That's like all the other stuff, how people light candles and do rituals and ceremonies and stuff. That's that part. Because if you only have hard work and discipline, what will happen is you will just keep working with no results. because you won't have the energy, you won't have the opportunities. And then if you don't have hard work and discipline and you get opportunities, they just fall through because you don't have the container, you don't have the discipline, you don't have the structure, you don't have the day-to-day operations to make those opportunities stick. And so that's why in the ancient ways, you always had to have both. You had to cultivate discipline, and that's what like ceremony did, and that's what rituals do, is they cultivate that part too, because it's the day in, day out stuff. It's the phone calls you have to make, it's the connection, it's the business networking, it's the all that stuff. And then there's that spiritual component, that unseen component where people call you and say, yeah, I love your business, I want you to do this. It's those things. It's that the hard work and discipline meets that opportunity and you're ready. You're ready. You manifested a weekend in the mountains with 2 medicine men, just the 3 of us, camping, creating drums, watching shooting stars, and conversing about deep things. It was beautiful. Well, that's awesome, Mona. How are you doing, Mona? That sounds amazing. But see, that's the unseen thing that she, manifested a perfect weekend with medicine people. And I'm sure a lot of energy came through that, a lot of visualization, a lot of wisdom, a lot of power. See, that's the thing that I don't hear a whole lot of people talking about when we talk about really manifesting, is the power part of it. It's you can't just work. You have to have that ancient part to it, that magical part, that unseen part, that feminine part. So if you think about it like that, the Huitzilopochtli energy is more masculine. It's the discipline, right? And then the Malinali, or what we call ancient magic, is feminine. So grandfather and grandmother, feminine and masculine. It's those 2 opposing forces, yin and yang. And that's what's needed. You're doing well. Your car brought me there. I think that's something. Yeah, I remember that song, the car song. That's cool. And that's the thing, is like sometimes we're put into difficult situations and we have to lose a lot of things in order to gain a lot of things. That's just kind of how universal law works. Sometimes your path has to be swept in order for new things to emerge. It's just like when we garden, we have to clear the soil, and then we put new soil, new fertilizer, new nutrients, new nourishment before we, plant new seeds. And that's just like our life. Sometimes everything's swept out, everything's cleaned out. The wind blows it away so that new things can emerge. And, when you're like living in a car, that kind of situation, or RV or something like that, where you're mobile, there's a lot of traveling going on right now. A lot of people are like having a more mobile lifestyle, van life, stuff like that. You're really having to learn how to trust your intuition and your inner guidance and that GPS, and then the Malinali, the opportunities. And to stay structured while you're mobile, I think that's even more challenging, because you don't have like the same physical location all the time. You're moving around. And when you're moving around a lot, it's all about learning how to trust and how to, navigate in unseen waters, and to understand, how your instinct moves. So that's pretty cool. And then you have like really cool, like spontaneous things happen. That's what I notice when I'm always traveling and stuff, is that when you're in that mindset, when you're in that energy, you don't know what's going to happen. Like, so they're trying to get re-energized. When you're trying to get re-energized, what I always say is like, go back to the beginning. to that quality energy, to that ego energy, when you were super excited about what it is you're doing. And like Nicole was saying, go back and look at your successes along the way. Because I think a lot of times when we hit failures, when we hit obstacles and we hit challenges, we can let those things weigh us down and we forget all the momentum we had. We forget all the good things that have happened. We forget all the steps that have happened to get us to where we are. And, usually when we're on the road to what we're supposed to be doing, to our, what they call now manifestations, or what we call visions, you will have what they call beginner's luck. When you're really on your path and you're doing what you're meant to do, you will have beginner's luck. That's what they call it. And it means like a big opportunity or something will happen. Say for example, somebody want to do hypnotherapy and you do it and then suddenly you get your first client right away. You have something big out of the ordinary happen that is like a sign from the universe saying, you're supposed to do this. And then you're like, yeah, I'm supposed to do this. And then after that, you may encounter your struggles and challenges, but the universe will always give you something that first gets you going on your path. And then after that, it's the hard work and discipline and structure and all that stuff that you cultivate to then meet that opportunity. I think the worst thing is when you lack the structure and you lack the discipline and you get the opportunity and then it falls through. I've seen that happen a lot, where it's like, I wasn't ready for that opportunity. And then it's like, you have to get ready so that when the next one comes, you're like, okay, yeah, I'm ready now. I'm not going to miss that opportunity. Sweet Pea says, that's what I'm doing now, is going back to square one. Yeah, that's a good way to say it. Of steps I had in the past that worked to help me manifest the new I'm trying to get to. Yes, that's exactly. Go back to square one. But it's not going like backwards, because I think a lot of times when we do that, we're like, I'm going back to the beginning, or all that hard work is for nothing. It's not for nothing. It's that first step, when you go back to it will remind you of why you're doing what you're doing. Because after so long of doing something, and especially if you keep hitting yourself up against the wall with no opportunities, and you're just working, it's very frustrating. So this is how I would think about it. If you're all work and no opportunities, that means you have to bump up your spirituality. You have to bump up rituals, ceremonies, practices, the unseen parts, prayer, whatever your spiritual practice is. You have to have a spiritual practice in order to really get really good opportunities. And connecting to Mother Earth, connecting to the nature, connecting to the feminine, because that's where it comes from. And then, if it's the discipline and structure you're suffering from, you're not, structured enough, then it's like doing a challenge, maybe like a 30-day challenge of some kind. I'm going to do one call a day for my business, or I'm going to do one good thing for my health every day. I'm going to change a habit. Everybody's working on something a little different. If you're writing a book, then you may want to do 1 hour of writing a day, 3 hours of writing. I call it sacred writing time, that you designate and you carve out a time every day in your schedule that you say, okay, this is for my writing. This is just for my writing time. And it's not sporadic. And if you have that and you're ready to, publish and all that stuff, and you have the written book, but you're just not having any opportunities, then you have to sit in ceremony with your book. You have to do something spiritual to activate that book, to activate, the opportunities. So it's a dance between the unseen and the seen worlds. And that's actually what real success is. It's never just one and it's never just the other. It's the dance between the two forces, the two cosmic forces that are constantly weaving our life. And that's why I always say in spiritual practices, you have to see a material result, because that's the whole purpose of this dance we're in, is that if you are only spiritual and you're not seeing any material results, there's a problem. Your life is going to be imbalanced. And if you're only focused on the material and you have no spiritual, then your life is just going to be always like missing something. You're not going to experience the mystical and the magical. It's always going to be, the mundane and the hamster wheel. And it's funny because like most people, if they're trying to achieve money, if that's their goal, they always say, once I get to this, I'm going to be happy. Once I make this money, I'm going to be happy. And then they get to that money, whatever goal it was, and they're more miserable than when they didn't have it. And that's because they're missing the spiritual, they're missing the magical, the mystical is not there. And when it's not there, your life is not complete. And so I see a lot of clients, who achieve lots and lots of success in their life, have more money than they'll ever spend in their whole lifetime, and are so miserable because that's where they put all their attention into, and they didn't develop those other parts of self. And that's the thing you want to think about too with your manifestations and your visualizations is, the holistic part of it, mental, emotional, spiritual, psychological, physical. You want to think about all those things. What are your goals in relationships? What are your goals in spirituality? What are your goals in your mental health, your emotional health, your physical health? And not put too much into one category, but try to balance that. And that's the medicine wheel. And that's the goal. It's not easy, but that's the goal. So, is there any other questions or comments or manifestations? Today, I just wanted to touch in and talk about that because solstice is coming up. It's a big doorway. A lot of people right now are probably already feeling the energies of solstice. Anybody feeling the energies? The dream time for the next week will probably be pretty telling. There's a lot of dreams that the spirit world brings in during this time. Oh, what was coming after the jaguar? Oh, in that particular thing, it's not about like a zodiac wheel or anything. It's just that's how the energy of manifestation works, is that first you have the not the hummingbird. First you have the eagle. It's a story. It's a long story, but it's a story of how creation was started. So it's like first it was the Quautli, the eagle that dove into the fire, because the story is about how the sun emerged in the sky. So it's a pretty long story of creation, but it's really talking about the first medicine that came to the sun to become the sun was a Quautli, was the eagle, and it dived into the fire, and when it emerged out, it was black, and that's why it's black, is because it was burned by the flames. Then the next medicine that stepped in that said, I could become the sun, is the jaguar. And that's just the story. There's no other animals that jumped in after that. Because what they're trying to illustrate in that story is that in order to have what you want in this life, in order to create what you want in this life, you have to have the passion to do it. That's the eagle. And then you have to have the patience to do it, which is the jaguar. You have to have the patience, because if you don't have the patience, the passion will fade. The passion will fade. If you don't have jaguar medicine, then you won't succeed. Your sleep times are changing up some like it did before, so I don't know if that is part of the upcoming solstice energy or not. Yeah, A lot of times it is. A lot of times it is. Like, especially if you're sensitive to energy, you'll notice like new moons, full moons, solstice, equinox, or times where just collective energies are ramped up. You'll have problems sleeping. Either you'll be so energized that you won't sleep, or you'll just be so drained and tired that you'll just sleep all the time. It just kind of depends. And that's not, and you have to know if that's due to like depression or anxiety or stuff like that, or if that's just part of your natural circadian rhythm. Can I read the story somewhere? I haven't heard of it. It's part of the Tonopoali, which is the I believe they call the Aztec calendar, but it's the Toltec calendar. It's much older than the Aztec, but it's the, I don't know what they would call it. It's part of our teaching. So it's like it's part of the calendar, and it's part of the teachings, and it's part of like a creation story, I guess. But it's called Qualtli is the eagle. So in the Tonopoali, the first things you learn are the animals. They're not animals, but the aspects, or what they call the potentials. Sorry, Peaky's here distracting. The potentials. You have to learn the 20 potentials. And they have a daytime element, and then they have a nighttime element. So what we'd call the day is like the positive qualities, and then the night is the shadow qualities, or the things you have to overcome. And so that's the first teaching in the calendar system, is that you have to learn those 20 potentials. And part of those 20 potentials is the jaguar and the eagle. And then, there's Peaky. And there's the ocelot. No. And actually, it's not the jaguar, it's the ocelot, which is, I believe, a smaller jaguar-like animal. And see, the problem with that kind of stuff, and why it's hard to find really credible, legitimate teachings, is because it's been misinterpreted, and it's been demonized. That's the only word I can think of right now. But it's been demonized because a lot of the Catholic and the people who went into those areas where the ancient knowledge was, first they destroyed all of the ancient codexes, and then second, when they came they tried to document the stuff, they put it through their perspective, through their lens, and all of that was wrong. Because the first thing like when you go to look up these aspects and these potentials, the first thing I'll say, well, this God. But in the ancient way, they never called them gods or deities. They were potentials. They were like archetypes. Like, Joseph Campbell talks about archetypes. That was more closer to what they were. They were archetypes. They were potentials. They were vibrations, energies that were embodied in Mother Earth. And that was the first misunderstanding. Another misunderstanding is they believe that people did sacrifices and rituals and things like that, which they never did. They never did it because they didn't understand the codexes. They didn't understand the symbology. And quite frankly, they didn't really want to. They wanted to see it through their lens because they were colonizing people. And so they didn't want to show you what was the reality of it. So what ended up happening to these teachings is they went underground. They went in the families. So people who held this ancient knowledge, they passed it on from father to son, mother to daughter. It went down the line like that, and that's how it survived. And that's how you learn it to this day, is through oral. There's no real book on it because nobody wrote it down, because if you wrote it down, you were likely to be killed. And that was the reality of the situation. So now it's coming back more and more, but it's oral. It's oral. You can't really learn this stuff from a book. So that's how it goes. But it's coming out more and more. That's what I'm noticing now. And since 2020, the information is now available more to the people who want it. It'll go to it's medicine. It'll go to the places and spaces it needs to go to, and to the people that are going to embody that knowledge and wisdom. Because first you learn the 20 potentials, then you have to learn the ancient number system, then you have to learn the birds. There's like 13 birds you have to learn. And then you start to understand your body and how it's connected to these ancient stars, and, you know, especially Venus, the sun, the moon, and all those sacred alignments. And then really the calendar teaches you about yourself, because then you start to understand the day you were born, the number you were born, and that will tell you your life purpose and mission and potential. And so what I love about that system is that, you know, in ancient times, they had a system of knowing who you were from day one. And what's even more incredible is that they could plan their births to match their family system. So say, like, you know, you wanted a child who was a Quatli, who was an eagle, you know, you could plan your moon cycle and your, you know, everything, your cycles, to match the day that you wanted your child to be born on. That's the most incredible thing, is that women could plan the day that they birthed, because they wanted a child with that potential, that energy, because they knew it would match their family. This was kind of mind-blowing. No science involved, nothing, just understanding themselves and the moon and the stars and how they aligned, and then planning a cosmic birth. It's really cool how it was. But when you knew the day you were born, so say, like, for me, I'm like a 7 Malinali. So when I was born, my parents would be like, okay, she's 7 Malinali. That's a medicine woman. That's that path. And then they would, you know, map out your life so that you could become that person. So that, you know, from day one, you knew your destiny, that you would know your family from age 0 to 13 would cultivate that. They would help you become that person. And then you had a system, a whole mentorship, teaching, everything that could support you to become that person. And then it was just up to you how far you wanted to go on that path. And then it's really cool is because everybody knew that people, when they met you and you said your name, they would know what you are and who you are and what your destiny was. That's the fascinating things. It is mind-blowing. I know, it's like, phew. Every time I sit with my teacher and my mind is blown, because it's you want to know it. I've already told you what you are, Nicole. You're the wind. Oh, Kiki's back again. I don't know. Kiki wasn't feeling so good yesterday, but today she's doing much better. It's just part of getting older, I guess. Yeah. She just ate her dinner. All righty, everybody. Was there any other questions? I know today we kind of just dived into visions, but I, wanted to go into this topic because we're about to head into solstice, and it's going to be a powerful week. And I hope that everybody can take some time to think about their own visions and what it is that, the Great Spirit is calling you to do. And take some time and really sit with yourself and map out your next steps, because when solstice hits, we have 6 more months to the year in the Gregorian calendar. And it's a really powerful time to re-energize and to re-visualize and to get re-excited about your path and your future. So thanks so much for joining me today. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, everybody. And I will see you next week on Monday at 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Until then, many blessings.